Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the dream house you've been longing for is now impossible to afford. How did we get here? In the land of opportunity, where the American dream is deeply woven into our national fabric, the middle class is facing an alarming housing crisis. The dream of homeownership, once a reachable goal for many, has slid into the realm of impossibility for a growing number of people. Our nation is grappling with a problem of epic proportions. But how did we find ourselves in this predicament? To understand this, we need to go back in time and trace the origins of this crisis. We need to examine the factors that led to the bubble, its eventual burst, and the fallout that followed. We need to delve into the intricate web of economic, political, and social factors that have shaped the current housing landscape. This is no ordinary tale. It's a saga of dreams deferred, of opportunities lost, and of a middle class squeezed by the crushing weight of a housing market gone awry. It's a story that involves everyone from policymakers to real estate moguls, from bankers to the ordinary citizen dreaming of a place to call home. But it's not just about the numbers or the economics, it's about the human cost. It's about families struggling to keep a roof over their heads, about parents worrying about the kind of world they're leaving for their children, about young people questioning if they'll ever be able to afford a home. In this crisis, we see a reflection of broader societal issues, of income inequality, of changing demographics, of shifting economic realities. The housing crisis is a mirror held up to our society, revealing some uncomfortable truths. So let's embark on this journey. Let's navigate the complex terrain of the housing crisis, exploring its roots and its implications. Let's ask the hard questions and seek the elusive answers. But to understand where we are, we must first look at where we started. The seeds of the housing crisis were sowed long before we actually felt its impact. Subtle signs emerged, gently nudging at our awareness, but we chose to look the other way. Property prices started to climb, slowly at first, then rapidly, like a mountain climber, determined and relentless. We cheered, celebrating the increased value of our homes, oblivious to the mounting danger. Meanwhile, our income, the worker in this tale, trudged along, a steady plodder, unable to keep up with the sprinting property prices. The gap between income and property prices, once a small stream, widened into a chasm. The bridge that the middle class had relied upon to cross over to homeownership was crumbling. Why did we not see it coming? Perhaps because the signs were not written in bold, dramatic letters, but in the subtle language of economics. The writing was on the wall, but we were not reading. Soaring property prices, instead of being a cause for alarm, were seen as a sign of prosperity. After all, who doesn't want their property to appreciate, right? But when the cost of a roof over your head starts to outweigh the money in your pocket, it's a sign that something's amiss. While the middle class celebrated the rising value of their homes, they were unwittingly being priced out of the market. As property prices skyrocketed, the dream of homeownership began to slip out of reach for many. The widening income-property price gap was a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. It was a silent crisis, brewing beneath the surface, unseen and unheard. But like a whisper that grows into a roar, it would soon make its presence felt. We were standing at the edge of a precipice, looking out over a landscape that was about to change dramatically. The stage was set, the actors were in place, and the drama was about to unfold. And this was just the beginning. As the years rolled by, the bubble kept growing, fueled by a dangerous mix of speculation and easy credit. Let's take a closer look at this. Speculation in any market involves purchasing an asset with the hope that it will increase in value over time. The housing market was no exception. As more and more people jumped on the bandwagon, properties were being snapped up left and right, often by those who had no intention of living in them. Instead, they hoped to flip them for a quick profit. This demand pushed prices upward, causing the bubble to inflate further. Now you may ask, how were these speculators able to purchase such expensive assets? That's where the availability of easy credit comes into play. In the years leading up to the housing crash, lenders were more than willing to provide loans, often with little to no down payment required. This was due in part to the belief that housing prices would continue to rise indefinitely. When this assumption proved false, those who had overextended themselves were left holding the bag. But it wasn't just the speculators who were taking advantage of this easy credit. Many ordinary middle-class Americans were lured in as well. They were told that owning a home was not only a good investment but also a key part of the American dream. Unfortunately, many of these individuals were not financially prepared for the responsibility of homeownership. When the market turned, they found themselves in a precarious position. Moreover, this easy credit was often packaged in risky financial products like subprime mortgages. These loans, which were marketed to borrowers with poor credit histories, came with high interest rates and terms that were often difficult to understand. As the bubble grew, so did the number of these risky loans. So by the time the bubble was at its peak, we had a situation where housing prices were artificially inflated due to speculation, while many homeowners were saddled with loans they could not afford. The housing market was a house of cards ready to collapse at any moment. The stage was set for a disaster. And then, the unthinkable happened. The bubble burst. In the lead up to the burst, there was a frenzied dance of prosperity. The housing market was on fire, with prices skyrocketing at an unprecedented rate. And in the heart of this financial frenzy, subprime mortgages were the prime culprits, masquerading as saviors of the American dream. Subprime mortgages, by their very nature, are loans given to individuals who might have difficulty maintaining the repayment schedule. Lenders found a gold mine in these risky loans, slapping on higher interest rates and packaging them into attractive financial products. This was the era of easy money, where banks handed out loans like candy at a parade, with little regard for ability to repay. The housing market, previously thought to be invincible, became a house of cards, teetering dangerously on the brink of collapse. Homeowners, lured by the promise of easy money, found themselves buried under a mountain of debt that they couldn't repay. Foreclosures began to rise and the dominoes started to fall. And then, the financial crisis hit. It was a perfect storm, a catastrophic combination of high-risk lending, reckless borrowing, and an economy that was already on shaky ground. The bubble, bloated and overextended, could no longer sustain itself. When the bubble burst, it was not a quiet pop but a deafening explosion that echoed across the nation. The fallout was immediate and severe. Housing prices plunged, leaving homeowners owing more on their mortgages than their homes were worth. The financial institutions, once the masters of the universe, found themselves on the brink of collapse. The economy spiraled into a deep recession, the likes of which hadn't been seen since the Great Depression. The bursting of the bubble was a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked greed and reckless financial practices. It was a wake-up call to the nation, a grim reality check that the age of easy money had come to a disastrous end. The aftermath was devastating. In the wake of the crash, millions found themselves in a precarious situation. Suddenly, the once thriving neighborhoods turned into ghost towns, with for sale signs standing as sentinels in front of empty houses. The fallout of the housing crash was massive and far-reaching. It was not just a matter of losing homes, it was about losing a sense of security, a piece of the American dream. Homeowners were not the only ones affected. The crash sent shockwaves through the entire economy, leading to widespread job losses. Construction companies, real estate agencies, and financial institutions, sectors once booming with activity and optimism, were now grappling with layoffs and bankruptcy. A chain reaction was set in motion, affecting every corner of the economy. In the midst of this turmoil, the middle class bore the brunt of the fallout. They were the ones who had taken out mortgages, banking on the promise of a stable future. But as the market collapsed, so did their hopes. Homes they had invested their life savings in were now worth less than the loans they had taken out. Foreclosures became a common sight, as families were unable to keep up with their mortgage payments. The ripple effects were felt in every aspect of their lives. Children's education plans were put on hold as college savings were wiped out. Retirement funds dwindled as people had to dip into their savings to stay afloat. The middle class, once the backbone of the American economy, was now struggling to make ends meet. The fallout of the housing crash was not just about numbers and statistics. It was about people, their dreams, and their struggles. It was about the single mother who had to work 2 jobs just to keep a roof over her children's heads. It was about the elderly couple who had to sell their home and move into a rental because they couldn't afford the mortgage anymore. The dream of home ownership was now a distant memory for many. The fallout was a harsh reminder of the fragility of dreams and the stark reality of the housing crisis. Fast forward to 2024 and we are still grappling with the consequences. The housing crisis that began just a few years ago has left a lasting impact on our society, particularly on the middle class. This demographic, once the backbone of the American dream, is now struggling to hold on to the very foundation of that dream, home ownership. The current state of the housing market is a stark contrast to the boom years. Prices have skyrocketed while wages have remained stagnant. The gap between the haves and the have-nots has widened, and the middle class is caught in the crossfire. Home ownership, once a reachable goal for many, now seems like a distant dream. The implications of this are far-reaching. Not only does it affect the financial stability of families, it also impacts their quality of life. The stress of being unable to afford a home, or the fear of losing one's home, can lead to a myriad of mental and physical health issues. Furthermore, it disrupts the traditional progression of life, as many young adults are forced to delay milestones like starting a family or pursuing higher education due to the financial burden of housing. The ripple effect of this housing crisis extends beyond individuals and families. It affects communities, cities, and the entire economy. When people can't afford homes, it leads to an increase in rentals, which in turn drives up rental prices. This creates a cycle of unaffordability that is hard to break. And let's not forget about the impact on the future generations. The children growing up in this era are witnessing the struggles of their parents, and this could potentially shape their attitudes towards homeownership and financial stability. This is the reality we are living in. The housing crisis of 2024 is not just a story of numbers and figures. It's a story of people, dreams, and aspirations. It's a story of a middle class caught in the throes of a situation that was largely out of their control. The question remains, how do we fix this? As we stare at this daunting challenge, it's clear that we can't afford to repeat the mistakes of the past. The housing crisis of 2024 is not something we can sweep under the rug. It's a wake-up call, a demand for change, a plea for action. So, what can we do? How can we ensure that the middle class of America is not left out in the cold? The solutions are numerous, but they all require a shift in perspective, a willingness to rethink our approach to housing. One potential solution is policy change. Governments can play a pivotal role in orchestrating a turnaround. Policies that promote affordable housing, such as subsidies or tax incentives, can make a significant difference. We need to rethink zoning laws that restrict the construction of affordable homes. We need to push for policies that protect renters that don't allow them to be priced out of their homes. But government intervention is only part of the solution. The market itself needs to adjust. A shift towards sustainable, affordable housing models is crucial. Developers need to understand that affordable housing is not just a social good, it's a viable, profitable sector of the market. We also need to foster a culture of financial literacy. People need to understand the risks and rewards of homeownership, the nuances of mortgages and interest rates. Education can empower individuals to make informed decisions, to not get caught in the ruthless cycle of debt. And let's not forget, innovation can be a game changer. Technologies like 3D printing and modular construction can make housing cheaper and more accessible. We need to embrace these advancements, not shy away from them. In the end, it's about creating a system that works for everyone, a system that respects the dignity and the dreams of every individual. It's about recognizing that housing is more than just a commodity, it's a fundamental right. The road to recovery is long, but not impossible. It's time we take the first step. The housing crash of 2024 is a stark reminder of the fragility of our dreams. As we've journeyed through this narrative, it's clear that the housing crisis we face today is not just a sudden event, but an accumulation of years of neglect, poor decisions, and a lack of foresight. From the dawn of the crisis to the bubble growing and inevitably bursting, we've seen how this crisis has affected the middle class, the backbone of our society. The fallout is real and devastating, and the current scenario paints a grim picture. But it's not all doom and gloom. Looking forward, there is a chance for change. A chance to learn from our mistakes, to implement better policies, to create a housing market that is fair, equitable, and sustainable. And as we navigate this crisis, let us remember it's not just about houses, it's about homes, it's about people, it's about us.